Rain lashed against the bookstore windows, a steady drumbeat. Inside, warm and dry, Emma browsed the shelves. The scent of old books, comforting and familiar, filled the air. She trailed her fingers along the spines, each one a world waiting to be discovered. Reaching the classic section, she paused, drawn to the familiar comfort of Jane Austen.
"Persuasion," she murmured, pulling out the worn hardcover. "Always a good choice."
The voice startled her. She turned to find a man smiling down at her. He had kind eyes and a dimple that appeared when he grinned. Though I confess I'm partial to Pride and Prejudice myself, he chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound.
Emma, usually shy, surprised herself by engaging. Oh, Pride and Prejudice is a classic, no doubt. But there's something about Anne Elliot's quiet strength that resonates with me.
He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Quiet strength, you say? I'll have to revisit it with that in mind. I haven't seen you here before, he said, leaning against a nearby bookshelf. Daniel, he offered, extending his hand.
Emma, she replied, her own hand dwarfed by his.
I'm usually lost in the culinary section, he admitted, sheepishly rubbing the back of his neck.
Emma laughed, a light tinkling sound. A man after my own heart, though I'm more of a baker myself.
The rain continued its steady rhythm outside. They talked, their initial awkwardness melting away. Shared laughter filled the space between them. He suggested coffee at a nearby cafe, his eyes hopeful. She surprised herself by saying yes. The following week, they found themselves laughing over flour-dusted counters. Daniel's apartment, surprisingly tidy for a self-proclaimed bachelor, was filled with the warm aroma of baking bread.
Your turn,
Emma instructed, handing him a rolling pin. He looked at it with mock horror.
This is a weapon of mass destruction. I'm more adept with a spatula, I'm afraid.
Despite his protests, he proved to be a natural. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, their hands brushing occasionally. The air crackled with unspoken energy. As they shared the fruits of their labor, warm bread slathered with melting butter, Daniel turned to her, his gaze intense.
This was perfect.
Weeks melted into months. Rainy bookstore encounters turned into shared picnics under a summer sky. They explored hidden corners of the city, their laughter echoing through quiet museums and bustling markets. One cool evening, they found themselves at their spot, a secluded bench overlooking the city. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. Daniel turned to her, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sky.
I used to think this view was breathtaking. Now I can't imagine experiencing it without you.
Emma had never felt so seen, so understood. Daniel challenged her, made her laugh until her sides ached, and listened with his whole being. He had become her safe harbor, her confidant, her best friend. She found solace in the quiet moments they shared, curled up on the couch with a good book and a cup of tea. His presence had become a comforting constant in her life, a warm blanket on a cold night. One rainy Sunday morning, she found him in the kitchen, humming along to the radio, a dimpled smile on his face.
What are you up to?
She asked, leaning against the doorframe.
Just making breakfast for my favorite girl.
He replied, winking at her. In that instant, she knew she was home. The park was alive with the laughter of children. They sat on their bench, hand in hand, watching the leaves dance in the gentle breeze. Daniel squeezed her hand, his thumb drawing lazy circles on her skin.
Remember that rainy afternoon in the bookstore?
He asked, a hint of mischief in his eyes.
How could I forget? It was the day my life took an unexpected and utterly wonderful turn.
She laughed, the sound light and carefree. He smiled, his eyes filled with love.
To think all it took was a shared love for Jane Austen and a rainy day.
They sat in comfortable silence, their future stretching before them like a canvas, waiting to be painted with the vibrant colours of their love.